Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I have the most amazing guest with me today. His name is Dr. Victor Manzo, also known as Dr. Vic. And he is a business and spiritual mindset coach, certified pediatric chiropractor, holistic wellness coach, 3 times author, and podcast host, who has, by the way, published over 400 episodes. His most recent book is titled Decoding the Matrix: Powerful Tips for Unleashing Your Potential, Accelerating Your Spirit and Accelerating Your Spiritual Awakening, was released in May of 2022. Dr. Vic has been known as the individual who helps people experience their dream effortlessly by integrating his unique background, which includes many different techniques on energy healing, the vitalistic approach of chiropractic, the power of the subconscious, and the science of neuroplasticity. Dr. Vic, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you. You are a superstar. First of all, over 400 episodes. Oh my gosh, that's just amazing. So I'd love for you to share that journey into podcasting. But first of all, I just would like for you to tell us about your experience of how you ended up doing what you're doing now, your journey from, into enlightenment and how you were helping others. So take it away in your own words, however you want to tell it.
Yeah, I've been a chiropractor for like 12 years now, and it's one of those things where never had an intention on being a chiropractor. Never came across my mind. And I don't come from family of doctors or anything along that nature. And but in chiropractic, we always say that it finds you rather than you find chiropractic, for the most part, at least. And that was kind of my journey. My wife, my mom's a fitness instructor since I was 1 year old. And so the model of what health is has always been shown to me as exercise, supplements, and good nutrition. And so I thought, great, that's health. So by the time the age 13 came, I wanted to learn what that world was about. I asked my mom, hey, how can I get a 6-pack? That was the whole journey of that. The reason why I was so curious about a 6-pack is because my mom always said you had a natural belly, and I was husky. And I'm like, what's husky and what's a natural belly? I would love to learn what that is. I know what that means. I understand what presents that now, over curvature of your lower back, but I wanted to, get to start that journey. And so I did. And, 15, I got my 6-pack. I was very excited about that. Didn't even know it was there. I was in soccer practice, and a friend of mine's like, Vic, look at that 6-pack of yours. I'm like, huh? Hang on, I don't have a 6-pack. He goes, you have a 6-pack. And I was just like, cool, I guess I do. But, and 19 years old, I went to go play. I went to school at Arizona State for computers, and I was playing rugby for the club team. Now I'm exercising way beyond what I've ever done before. I'm eating, for a college student, way above average. I wouldn't say I was 100% clean, but I was way above average, and taking supplements and everything else. Every month, my health was declining. Had new things coming up, new symptoms. It just didn't make sense. I got a little scared. I thought I had a blood disorder. So by the time my first year is over, I told my mom, I need to go see a doctor. I need to go see what's going on here. And a few days before, it took about a month to get in, but a few days before, my mom's like, why don't you go and see Dr. Frank? That was a chiropractor I used to see when I was a kid. She's been seeing him since I was 1 year old. I said, if he can help me and get me in quick, let's do it. Lo and behold, that's my story, how I got into chiropractic, because my whole life changed 2 months later. 4 months in total, I got in the best shape of my life, and I didn't change anything. It was mind blowing. And I'm like, how is chiropractic doing all this? Like, yeah, okay, the symptoms are gone in 2 months. I can't believe that. Acne on my back, canker sores, never again. It was just the weirdest thing. All these other things I had. But not only that, I went down to 10% body fat. How'd that happen? I've been doing the same thing. Nothing changed. I stopped playing rugby because he told me I had to. It's the same chiropractor who told me I couldn't play organized football, which probably saved my life for all that stuff, but it's a whole other story. And that was my journey to where I started to get into chiropractic. And then I've done chiropractic for, again, like I said, the last 12 years. But what led me to where I am today as a coach in the biggest thing I coach is, entrepreneurs and creating their dream life, but creating their dream life effortlessly, which is that's a whole thing. is I had to go through the journey of listening to the, I'm a type A driver personality. So learning whatever I have to do to get things done, I'm going to do it. When they say, hey, you got to read about 80 books a year, I read 80 to 120 books a year. Hey, you got to listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts day in and day out. Listening to videos, self-help, personal development, motivation, you name it. I did this for 5 years straight. I hit my financial peak. Yippee-ki-yay, right? It was very exciting. But burned out every 4 to 6 months, unsatisfied and unfulfilled. So unfulfilled that I got to a point where I looked at my wife and she managed the office.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't know if I want to continue doing this. If this is what it is, and I'm always going upstream, I always have a battle. This is not what I imagined life was like. I may want to look at something else. You have to know, I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm extremely passionate about chiropractic. And I couldn't understand how I was so passionate, but yet so burned out. And so that was a point in my life where I said, enough's enough. I'm going to go take everything I've learned so far, all the universal laws of spirituality, ancient wisdom, quantum physics, all the neuroscience, neuroplasticity, neurology, behavioral neurology, all these things I've studied for all those years. And I'm just going to put that to work and let life teach me. I'm going to let life guide me. Because if we live in a quantum world, everything's vibration. So instead, I just got to focus on my vibration and forget the rest. I changed my practice around, took a 40% hit on purpose. It wasn't we chose to do that because we didn't have the practice we really wanted. Shifted all gears, 1.5 years, we're back to where we were, financial peak. But at the same token, I was working 50% less. Never burned out ever since. Always feeling fulfilled because I'm choosing what I want to experience and I'm having it happen in my life. It may not be the exact thing I choose because the universe always knows better, or God or Allah, or whatever you like to choose as a label. And that's been my journey. So at that point, when I got there, I said, I need to start coaching entrepreneurs because they're all in this. I mean, humans are stuck in a doing aspect, but so is entrepreneurs, even at a higher level. I go, what if I can teach them to go through this process? I never had to worry about my business again. I never stressed about it. And it continued to grow. I've never in the history of my career been in a down. We never had a down year. I mean, knock on wood, I'm very thankful for that. Except the year that we chose to take that hit. So once after that year, then we started growing back up. And so, but the interesting thing about the second half of my career, it was effortless. If I needed an idea, it would come to me at the right time. If I needed a person, a situation, or a circumstance, it would come to me at the right time. So instead of me chasing, it was coming and chase me. And that's a whole different psychology that we were very conditioned not to do that. We're not, especially in the West, we're in Western civilization. We don't, this is foreign language. And so that's when I started to do coaching on the side. And then last year, my wife and I moved from Chicago to Knoxville. And so we let the practice go because it was very hard to sell a practice in the climate of COVID and everything in Illinois. And so we let that go because we wanted to start a family and get this move on. So we did that, and I went full-time coaching this year, and it's been absolute blast because I've applied these techniques. I'm the type I tell people I'd rather be called a mentor than a coach because it's I've done this, I've lived this, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times now. I'm doing this where here we go again. I'm taking a hit financially, chosen to do this, not by I chose to make this. Because I know that at the end of the day, what I know and what I understand, everything's going to come right back around and work out. Everything's abundance at the end of the day. And I'm experiencing that now. And it's one of those things where I teach a lot of entrepreneurs and I teach people. And then on top of it, I miss being in the health aspect. And I didn't want to start a chiropractic office. So I was like, I started health coaching about 4 or 5 months ago, just to be like, I can offer some of the knowledge I have there. Because why not use it if I have it already? I already did that in my office in the past. So those are the things I do now.
Wow. Okay. So I want to go back to, I've been taking notes, keeping up with you. I'm a little type A myself. So I want to go back to like all the things that you listed with the quantum physics and that whole list of different techniques and modalities and subject matters that you rattled off earlier. Did you learn those all in your chiropractic program, or was that something that you studied on your own outside of chiropractic college?
All outside chiropractic during that time while I was in chiropractic school.
So you were doing both at the same time?
Yep.
Okay. So what attracted you to the, quantum physics? I mean, that's not exactly something I think, hey, I think I want to, research. Yeah, let me look into something. I think I'll choose something like quantum physics.
Yeah, what happened so chiropractic got started because of someone named D.D. Palmer. D.D.
Mhm.
Palmer in 1895 started the term chiropractic and the practice of it. But what he did before that, he was a magnetic healer, something very similar to Reiki healing and so forth.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in chiropractic, we've lost our way, and some of it's media and other control aspects. Some of it's chiropractors in themselves. We lost the essence of what chiropractic really is. So when I'm learning philosophy of chiropractic, because chiropractic's made by the art, science, and philosophy, there's three parts to it.
Mhm.
I wasn't learning the stuff that Didi really did. I wanted to know more about that energy stuff. I want to know, where did he come from? Why did he go chiropractic if he was already having a successful magnetic healing practice?
Mhm.
Why did he go to the nervous system? And so in unfortunately in the schools, they don't teach you a lot. We had philosophy class. We had three of them,
Mhm.
but I had to memorize like his four wives and this and that and what name was which one. I mean, it wasn't really like getting into it all. And
Mhm.
so after the first trimester, I was getting actually frustrated. I'm like, I'm learning medical doctor stuff, because this is all it was. I
Mhm.
mean, the first year and a half of chiropractic school is identical to medical school. There's
Mhm.
there's just no difference between the two. It's after that process where we go our own way. And so what was interesting is I was like, I want to know healing at the deepest level. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I don't know what this vibrational healing is or energy healing, but I want to learn energy healing.
Mhm.
And so I went into Reiki first. And then from there, that opened up the door to want to learn other techniques. So I went down through 10 or 12 different energy healing techniques. In that process, I learned, I went really deep into spirituality. I learned a lot about universal laws, but then I
Mhm.
also learned aspects of quantum physics and the aspects of healing and how that all works. And
Mhm.
so that's what got me into that path, because I was expecting just to learn energy healing.
Mhm.
And when I got into it, I learned that and a whole lot of other things in the process.
Mhm. So now let's go back even further to when you first went to your mom's chiropractor. And like you said, it just in 2 months completely turned your life around. The acne, the cold sores, everything, your 10% body fat. Do you feel, especially now that you know what you know, was he using that type of energy healing with you, or what do you think was that like the prep, the one thing that put you over the edge or over the top, let's say, not over the edge?
He was very philosophical in chiropractic. I appreciate that about him, because he instilled good roots in me, or at least planted some good seeds to
Mm,
help me in that process. But we have to take a look back and see what really is chiropractic and why did that help? Because I mean, I had acne on my back. I never had acne. I had cold sores. I had digestive issues. I had sensitivity
mhm,
to light. I had headaches. Never get
mm,
headaches. I've had headaches. My body wasn't healing well. I'd be sore for 3-4 days. If I slept, no matter how long I slept, I was always exhausted. Never had
mhm,
energy, mental fog, not having mental clarity, depressed for, there was a period of time where I was just like just not seeing the world in the way I usually. I was a very upbeat kid, and it was just
mhm,
weird to have these things. But it's understanding what chiropractic really does, and chiropractic it really allows for consciousness to be expressed more, or light, or life to be expressed more. That's really what chiropractic does, and that's what it was allowing for me to be. I think
mm,
sometimes principal chiropractors have a deeper purpose in what they're, and I hate to do this because I'm dividing our own profession, but it's just,
no.
when I say principle, I mean they're very philosophical in the essence of what really chiropractic is all about, to a certain degree.
Mhm,
How we make adjustments, the body heals, it's going to heal, it's always going to heal, as long as you give it what it needs. And he came from that place, and I think sometimes when you have a chiropractor who comes from that place, it really elevates the healing experience, just like in energy healing. It's the
mhm,
individual who has a higher vibration who's going to have a deeper impact on the healing of someone
mhm,
versus someone who doesn't have that. So I think that's where it comes from, but it's just the power of my body. It's just it
mhm,
was waiting to, I already worked out well. I've already was eating
mhm,
well to the most part, and had, nutrition. I was taking supplements, at least 6, 7 different supplements.
mhm,
So I was doing a lot to support my body, but this was the one thing, the nervous system just wasn't expressing itself. There was
mhm,
interferences in my nervous system.
mhm,
And once those were released, it was like, oh my goodness, thank you. Here we go. Now we can get back to what we
mhm,
need to. Does that kind of
mhm.
make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. I'm a recovering physical therapist. I didn't know if you knew that. I'm also a Feldenkrais practitioner. Which, yeah, so which is really interesting because, of course, my first career, I was definitely Western medicine trained and, follow the protocols and blah, blah, blah. And of course, as a respiratory therapist working in the intensive care unit, ventilators, and, you do have a certain, protocol and steps that you have to follow. So I was very much I don't want to say married, but definitely, clinging to that Western medicine mindset. And it wasn't until I had my own incredible, blew out this horrible chronic pain syndrome that I was forced, after living with the pain for 2.5 years, to explore other options and other modalities and healing modalities. So that's when I started to change that mindset from the Western medicine only to the alternative health and healing. And there's, as you said, there's just so much power and so much natural healing that we have, as long as you support the body and give it what it needs. But you've already said it. The key there is not just the body, it's the mindset, and how just by changing your mindset, you changed your entire life when you moved and went to Knoxville and changed your practice, and then followed that desire to become a business coach. So if you want to talk a little bit about, my favorite topic is neuroplasticity and the power of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I love neuroplasticity. It's what we do as chiropractors all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mindset's everything. I mean, it's the lens and how we see the world. It's the glasses that you wear, and I like to define mindset all the time because, unfortunately, last few years it's gotten like kind of watered down. There's so many mindset coaches out there now, and when they talk about mindset, they get into more of the what you kind of go, you can Google mindset, and that's what they kind of tell you, like, oh, there's scarcity mindset, and there's abundance mindset, there's this and that. But mindset, and I'm not saying that's not true, because that is,
Mm-hmm.
but it's understanding the premise of what really a mindset is. And it's just how you see the world, really, is what it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to. And then how you see the world, whatever that means. So let's say you see the world as something hostile. If you really believe that, your brain has to support that now. Your
Mm-hmm.
ego is going to start to go, all right, if this is what you truly believe, then we're going to bring this to your attention. This is part of your reticular activating system. It's part of RAS is for short. And so, because it only allows information into what you value. So if you really value that the world's a hostile place, then your RAS is only going to pay attention and bring to your awareness that. And what does that do over time is it conditions the mind. And that is the neuroplasticity. It rewires the brain to always be alert, to pay attention to this. And this becomes our experience. And this is what it is. And this is your world. That's your mindset now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same token, you can shift mindset to think it's a beautiful world, a friendly place. And then eventually over time, when you really believe that and you're really holding on that value of it, RAS is going to start to show you that. And then slowly but surely, you have a whole different experience over time. It takes time. I think the new research, or at least most recent research, one of my neuro professors, which I greatly appreciate, I had him for half my career in chiropractic school. He is the hardest teacher, and he is very, very blunt in many ways. People couldn't stand him. They tried to get him fired multiple times. But he's just, I always say he's too smart for his own good to be a teacher. He should just be, he does research and he teaches. And I had him for half my career, and I had him in a couple times in my certification program for pediatrics. And but he was talking about, I was talking to him one day about our attention spans, how they're getting less and less. And I said, from a neurological implication, basically neuroplasticity, I'm like, does that mean that it takes longer now for us to develop a habit? Because the old story was it's about 28 days to change, rewire your brain to a new habit. And he looked, he goes, absolutely. He goes, what we have right now is it's about on average. That doesn't mean that's for everybody. That's just on average what we're seeing. 84 days to change a habit now because of attention span.
Wow.
Getting less and less, that's kind of scary when you think about it, because, now you look at, I don't want to get, this might take us off tangent, but when you look at life nowadays and the speed of things, and look at TikTok, where, you get these short little videos, and I'm not just blaming TikTok because everybody's doing it now. That's only going to increase and shorten the speed. It's going to increase the speed or the of us getting less and less. And I just go, man, it's going to be harder and harder. But that's the concept of the mind, tying all back together, where when we shift our mind, that's why I tell a lot of my clients, like, there's, because I work a lot in the quantum aspect of things. And it's like, when I do this kind of stuff, yeah, instantaneously you can shift things, but we still live in 3D world, which means we have time and space we have to go through, and we have to have our brain rewire itself into these new patterns, these new habits, these new XYZ. And when we start to do that, then it becomes automatic eventually. Then you don't have to think about it anymore.
I'm so glad you brought that up about the attention span and all, like, the short clips. And it's almost like all of this technology is kind of like seducing us and sucking us in and taking away. It's almost like it's taking away our own creativity, our own power, our own critical thinking skills. It's really an insidious almost like a takeover, So I always tell people, put down your devices, because it's really sucking our capacity to be creative and to think critically. And I think it's very unsafe too. And people, I hate to see, especially women, walking around town with their faces in their cell phone, not paying attention to their environment. It makes me a little bit crazy.
No, yeah. And the other thing too is just when my neuro teacher taught it, he was saying to us when we were in school, this is what, 12, he's ahead of his time. We were 13, 14 years ago. And he would be like, yeah, what do you do on a phone? You do this with your thumbs. He goes, we were designed to do this, not this. He goes, my concern, he's very big about neurodevelopment. And that's why he's one of the top leading neuro guys in chiropractic. And if not, I would say he's number one, but I might be a little biased. But I do know I do know the other ones that are up there too. And I'm just like, I just really like who he is. But it's one of those things where he's all about, I mean, again, the brain gets fed by movement, and he's like, look at how much we're pulling away from what we naturally are designed to do. Like, and because he even takes this in the reference of women in pregnancy, and he goes, look at how women move today. He goes, that's only because, again, he teaches in the pediatric program. So pregnancy comes up, and he's like, and a lot of this comes up in our world. What we talk about is like, we don't move naturally like we used to anymore. He goes, you want to master movements, go look at a 1-year-old who just started to learn how to walk. Watch how they bend down to get things. Look how they move. That's natural movements of a human. We don't do that anymore. He goes, I'm not going to get into flexibility. That's all secondary. He goes, the brain needs that for information. And if we're not, or for food, and if we're not doing that, then we're losing out on keeping our brain young, active, and healthy.
And I love that you mentioned that too. Watch a 1-year-old move, because I'll tell my clients that a lot. It's like, go back to how we learned how to move when we were babies and children, especially even young babies. Nobody gave us little baby barbells and said, okay, do 10 reps, put one hand here, push this, do that, and boom, you're going to roll over in your crib. We learned by playing with the environment, exploring, and just seeing what worked for us. And then every single like milestone that we achieved, everybody's clapping. Oh yeah, you're wonderful. You're brilliant. Oh, look at you. You can roll over. You can sit up. You can walk now. And then once we became fully ambulatory and independent, it was like, okay, now sit down and shut up, because you're going to school and you're going to learn. Prior to that, everything we learned was with movement and exploration. So it's just such a conundrum, and so counterintuitive to how we were meant to learn. And then, of course, we get into organized sports, dance, gymnastics. We have coaches telling us the right way and the wrong way to move. And then that ability to explore our own bodies and our environment for ourselves just kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a whole podcast we can dive in right there alone.
Okay, so now, since you brought up podcast, over 400 episodes. I mean, bravo, that's incredible. When did you start podcasting, and what made you, wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'm going to start a podcast? Because it sounds like fun.
Yeah, my first podcast started in 2012, and it was called Wellness Smart Radio. And we used to go hop on a phone. It was blog talk radio and just record. It was all on health. I think I did like 100 and some episodes. And then I got away because I was like, I was excited about it, but like I do my feelings on it were just not like I felt like I wanted to go deeper. Like, talking about health is great. I already do that with my client and patients and so forth. I already do a ton of education there. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to get into that more if I'm already doing it. And then it wasn't until 2018 where I've kind of already made my shift and change in life. And, I'm focusing on the pediatrics. I'm applying all this stuff to where all of a sudden I'm working 50% less than what I originally was, and still I was back at where I was at my peak. But that was the moment where I was like, I want to get back in the podcasting, but I want to do it from a mindset perspective. I want to do it from a spiritual perspective. I want to do it in that element. So in April in 2018, or I think March 31st was my first episode in 2018 is when I started, and I just went with it. And then I had my book release that came out in that summer. And the reason why was honestly at first was just to create content in a different way, because I wasn't into the I always tell I tell my clients all the time, you have to find what you enjoy. Like, everyone says, well, these are the right things you have to do in business. No, there isn't. There's a gazillion right ways to do things. What do you like to do? Because then from a vibration standpoint, or an energy standpoint, you got to be doing what you love. Because if you don't love it, and you don't really enjoy it, guess what? It ain't going to work. It's going to be a
Mhm.
task to you, and it's going to drain you, and you're not going to get to your
Mhm.
dream life. So for me, podcasting, I love doing it.
Mhm.
But it was in April 2018 is when it started, and it's been a 4-year plus journey. I think it's 4.5 years now, and I just love it. I mean, 400. I think we had 407. Tomorrow's gonna be 417, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And it's I started it, for that purpose, but I also started it because eventually I wanted to interview people, and I wanted to interview people that I normally wouldn't meet,
Mhm.
to just have a conversation, to pick their brain, to have, to share. And from that, my listeners will benefit from the conversation and all the questions I ask and so forth. And
Mhm.
it's been a fun journey. It's a labor of love,
Mhm. It certainly is a
as
labor
you
of
know.
love. Yes, I do know that. Okay, so then your podcast and your first book, that kind of happened all at the same time.
Yeah, within about 3 months. My podcast came out in April. My book came out, I think it was in July, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken.
And what motivated you to write that first book?
I wanted to be an author. It was a vision of mine for quite some time.
Mhm.
And it was, for some reason, I kept putting it off, kept putting it off. And by the time I mean, I have a goal of writing 30 books in my life. Why 30? Have no idea. The number just comes up like that. Um, and it was one of those things where I was like, I wanted to be an author at a certain age, and I missed it. 28 was when I wanted to be. And I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I'm ready to write a book. And all of a sudden it was a pulling and a calling. And I was like, I'm going to
Mhm.
write about what I went through and help share some of these rules that we call, this is a game called life, and there's rules to this game. If I can
Mhm.
share some of those rules, maybe people can rediscover the greatness of who they really are,
Mhm.
understand how they play in this game, and how they're really just a character that they chose. And so in my first book, it was all about that, and just sharing my experiences on that and so much more to help people see things in a different light so they can really step into their greatness in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form.
And then the second book.
Then the second one came out of nowhere too. That was the following year, and that's called "A Walk in the Dark." My books come to me. This is stuff I
Mhm.
teach my clients. Some people. This may sound foreign to some people, but it's like the title of the book. I don't know. I started feeling anxious, and I get like this anxiousness, and this is when I really feel pressure, like I'm being called to do something.
Mhm.
And it was just a book. I'm like, I don't even know what to write, but I being feeling like I have to write a book, but I have no clue what to write. And I remember it was a period where all of a sudden I'm like, I started seeing darkness, and I started to feel like there's a lot of darkness. And I just had an image in my head, and all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, a walk in the dark. We have to walk in the dark. That's part of life.
Mhm.
And that's where the title came from. And what I wanted to do at that time, and it was 2019 when this came out, right before COVID. And
Right.
what a great time. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk
I
about
mean, that almost sounds like that was prophetic or
it's amazing.
prophecy.
It's one of those things I wrote. I think it came out in October of 2019,
Wow.
and it's all about ending mental suffering, understanding darkness, and the beautiful beauty of what darkness can teach us. Like, it's our greatest ally, really.
Mhm. Mhm.
2 months later, you have China going on with it, but 3 months after that, 5 months after the book's written, I'm in Chicago. Lockdowns are coming down, and it was really interesting. I'm like, wow, I wrote that book, and then yet look what's going on. I'm like,
Mhm.
crazy how that happened. I
Mhm.
can't take any credit for this, but it just happened that way.
So
And
I would just like to, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm wondering if your book now, since we've gone through the pandemic, is even more valuable than it was prior to, because I think we could relate to walking in the darkness and now coming out of it. And a lot of, as bad as this whole experience has been for everybody, a lot of positive things have come out of it as well.
yeah, no, I think so in so many ways, and it's a good reference point that we have because we all
Hmm.
can experience that. I mean, what was the thing about COVID that what's the number one thing that humans don't like, or they repel or reject, and that's uncertainty. And what's
Hmm.
uncertainty? That's darkness. That's unknown territory.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things now that we've went through it. This is, it can make you reference back and look at your life and look at, yeah, there were some dark moments, but
Hmm.
we don't have to go through a pandemic to experience this, but because we've had dark moments in our life. But when you
Hmm.
really step in, my whole purpose of it is to not be afraid of the darkness that we face, but also I share tips of how to sit with it.
Hmm.
Because when you can sit in the darkness, that's a power in itself to do. But when you can
Hmm.
do that, holy cow, will you learn. What I love about the darkness is, again, this is what I did with my career. So I'm taking stuff that I've used in my life.
Hmm.
Like when I stopped reading. It doesn't mean I never stopped reading books. I mean, books would come to me that I would feel like I need to read. But what I was doing was I was letting life guide me.
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what, life, you're going to bring things to my situations and circumstances that I need to work on. Whatever is going to show up, here's where I want to go in my life. I'm leaving that to
Mhm.
you. I'm not going to try to figure out how to do this. I'm just going to focus on what I can do every single day. And I know you're going to bring everything to me. And what I shared in there is like, what I learned from letting life guide me in one
Mhm.
year was
Mhm.
more than what I learned in the last 5 years, reading 80 to 120 books a year and all that, because
Wow.
the beautiful thing about the darkness is you're going to learn what you need to learn that is
Mhm.
specific to you for your evolution to help you where you want to go in your life. It's like the most beautiful gift in the world. And I
Mhm.
know it's kind of weird to say, a darkness is actually a blessing, but it really is when you really, how, again, it all comes to how you're looking at it.
Mhm.
And because you can have an event to happen, that's 10 different people, and one event happens and 10 people are there, you're going to get 10 different outcomes, and it's all because of how they're seeing it,
Mhm.
how they're looking at it. And that plays a huge role in how we move forward. So the whole purpose of that was, how do we end mental suffering? What creates our suffering? But more importantly, if we can see the
Mhm.
darkness as our friend, it opens that door that we really can't suffer anymore then.
Well, you can't have the light without the darkness.
Exactly.
So, okay. And now your third book, which was released in May of 2022, so fairly recently. And that sounds pretty, pretty powerful because you've got some tips in it. So is it a how-to book, or what's the book about? Or
Yeah, there's three parts to the book, and it got broken down into three parts, and where the first one just explains what's the matrix. What
Mhm.
is the matrix? And just for the listeners here, the matrix is just another term for that, as a human collective consciousness.
Mhm.
And that is just basically averaging all the consciousness levels of all the humans that exist. That creates an experience for humanity as a whole. And
Mhm.
then there's sub matrices, which is countries, towns, cities, all that
Mhm.
stuff. And it gets down to the smallest individual or aspect of it, which is you and me.
Mhm.
But I talk about how that conditions our mind, and
Mhm.
how there's constructs and programs that play a role in that, and that it's always going to pull us back to the vibration of everyone unless we're
Mhm.
intentional with our life. So that's all in the first part. The second part then talks about potential. What really
Mhm.
is our potential? How do you know what your potential is? And how can you truly live that? And I share some things about what I do in my coaching with my clients to help add into the mix of that. And then the third part is spiritual awakening. And I talk
Mhm.
about, what does that look like? And so it's, what's the four stages of it? There's some people have five, some have six. I was like, what's the four easiest, most simple, what I've experienced multiple times, um, when it comes to spiritual awakening. But more importantly, why is it so critical for humanity to have you, the individual, live your potential? What does that mean for your life
Mhm.
when you're awakening to this process? And it's not just, you could be awakening, or it's reinforcing your path. And on top of that, what does that mean for humanity, and why we need you now more than ever to live intentional with your life and not be in the mental prison of what the matrix kind of pulls us towards?
Mhm. It's fascinating because it's probably been the past 5 episodes that I've recorded. That topic, spirituality, spiritual awakening, spiritual transformation, just keeps popping up. And I really believe that there is a shift in people's mindset, that we are a little bit more aware or accepting of the spiritual world, and the spiritual growth in our own personality or our own selves.
Yeah,
And I wonder if it was the pandemic that did this to us. I don't know.
it all started, 2012 is when the shift happened. But
Mhm.
then there's like, it's kind of like everything in our life, right? You make a change in your life. Like, let's say consciously, I make a shift in my mindset. Well,
Mhm.
my brain's still stuck in the past. My body's still stuck in the past. So I have to condition that through. It's
Mhm.
the same thing here, where 2012, when the media was really making it seem like the end of the world was coming. And I hate when, I mean, it's misinformation, because really what was happening is, if you understood the Mayan calendar, and I studied it, it was one of the things that it was going to be the end of time, and we were going to step
Mhm.
into a new era.
Mhm.
That's all that really meant. It wasn't
Mhm.
it wasn't meant to be a doomsday calendar like they're
Mhm.
thinking, like, oh, that's it. This is the end of time. Look, they only made it to this far. I'm like, what if they ran out of wood? I mean, or stone. Um, but no, it's one of those things where as we as society. But what's also interesting is everything happens in, this is what I love about life, when we just sit back and act like we don't really know. Like I act life like I don't have everything figured out. And the older I get, the
Mhm.
more I realize there's a lot more I don't have figured out.
Mhm.
I just know a sliver of things. But even now, look at quantum physics coming around. Right. It
Mhm.
came out, I know, 15 years ago. I forgot when the observer effect came out, but the study on that. But quantum physics and quantum mechanic principles, they're holding ground more and more and more. And what they're doing is they're proving, actually, they're marrying spirituality now of ancient wisdom that was around 2,500 to 5,000 years ago.
Mhm.
We're finally, I always say, we're catching up. We're not
Mhm.
ahead of times. We're catching up to what our past was, because
Mhm.
sometimes I think they were more evolved than we were. I mean, they can build, I mean, look at the Egyptians and all the pyramids. They're still around. I know our
Mhm.
buildings won't be around that long afterwards. I'm sorry. They knew something. But
Mhm.
long story short, the point I'm trying to make is that there is this shift in consciousness, and we have the science now to appease
Mhm.
our left brain. So we can't go and call it woo-woo anymore. You
Mhm.
can't ignore it. There is a whole other world that we're starting to just understand. And the beautiful thing that this other world's teaching us, because this is why I love when physicists get excited about this, when they like do a study and they're like,
Mhm.
yeah, we don't understand how this thing works, but it's amazing how it does.
Mhm.
And it's like, for a scientist, they want to know like every detail. And in
Right.
quantum, they're like, there's just this phenomenon, and we don't really know, but we have an understanding of it. It's kind of like
Mhm.
electricity. We don't really know how electricity works, but we know how to utilize it.
Mhm.
And it's kind of that same kind of principle when it comes at.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely there's definitely a more of a shift happening, and I'm excited to see what every year, every day is like. Let's see what's going to continue from this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. I know a lot of people think that, the end of the world is coming right now. But okay, whatever. But you can't live in fear. And if it comes, it comes. And we'll just find out what happens afterwards. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really exciting changes going on right now. And to me, it's really positive and encouraging. And I'm really excited to see what happens over the next couple of years.
Yeah, if there's one thing I could just add to it all, is that um you wherever you put your focus is what it helps, it makes things expand. It gives life more
Mhm.
to it. So like if we can see the world, like I always tell people, like friends of mine, when they share like stuff of what's going on in the world or where we're going or and I said, listen, just give me stuff that I want to see that's positive. What I want to see, and I don't mean positive like to ignore things. I mean, I'm only going to give my attention to what I want to see more in
Mhm.
the world. And
Mhm.
that's it. And I say, well,
Mhm.
you got to know what the bad stuff. I don't want to pay attention to the bad stuff. I don't want that to be part of my reality.
Right.
Because if
Well,
I start to put, oh, go ahead.
no, well, you can know it, but you don't have to focus on it.
I just want to give my energy to what I want to experience or what
Mhm.
I want to see happen for the world. And the more people do this is the power we have. I talk about this in the
Mhm.
book, The Matrix. The more we as the individuals start to take this on and say, some people say, oh, we're going to have the dollar's going to collapse and blah, 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 blah. But if we as humans ignore that, not ignore it, but just go,
Mhm.
we want to experience this instead. If
Mhm.
all of us come upon that, we influence the matrix, because we're the ones that really have
Mhm.
the power of the matrix, the control of the matrix.
Mhm.
And if we do that, then it won't happen. And everything, our whole experience will change. And this is not out there stuff. Universal laws show this.
Mhm.
And we've all heard law of association is one of them.
Mhm.
You take your five closest people, you average them out, that's you. Or if the five incomes of your closest people, average them out, that's pretty much what you're making. That's
Mhm.
called law of association. Well, this also works
Mhm.
on a matrix level, on an essence that we control our experience as humanity. And
Mhm.
I think I'm one, and there's many people out there who are trying to get that information out there and help people
Mhm.
to realize that, because once they do, we actually can control what we want to experience in our lives, not only on our
Mhm.
personal, but as an overall experience
Mhm.
of for humanity.
So basically, we have a lot more power and control over what is going to be happening to us in the future than we think we do.
Absolutely. And a lot of powers that be don't want you to know that, because that's a whole nother story. And I don't get into
Right.
conspiracy stuff, but it's just, again, it comes from who controls the matrix. Well, it's the people who have
Mhm.
the biggest influence.
Mhm.
Because if they
Mhm.
have the biggest influence, then all of a sudden they can have control over it. And the more
Mhm.
eyes on something, the more people focusing on something, if they can
Mhm.
create fear, is the easiest way to control behavior. This is scientific.
Mhm.
They've proven this. I remember the study came out during COVID talking about how
Mhm.
fear, you get someone into a
Mhm.
state of fear, you can actually control their behaviors and their outcomes of what they're going to do. And so it's one of those things where if I'm losing my train of thought with that, but coming back to behaviors and stuff, we have the power to shift and change
Yeah.
everything. And that's been a message that's been around it's not something new, right? The powers of
Mm-hmm.
the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the government, the government works for the people, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't think we do. But from a quantum side, from a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual side, we do. And if we step into it together and come together with that, our
Mm-hmm.
results in our future changes because of where we're vibrating at. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I always tell people this whole, when it comes to like all these doings and we have to do. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't solve anything because you're
Mm-hmm.
coming from a place where the vibration is. And
Mm-hmm.
if the vibration, and like Einstein says, you can't solve the same problem with this level of consciousness that created it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go outside that. So when you shift your consciousness levels, if humans do this, then when we do something, it creates a whole different outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we have to focus on. And it's been like what is the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain kind of thing. And that's the behind the curtain is really
Right.
understanding this. And we change our whole entire world. And I'm talking from different cures for diseases or just understanding how to heal the
Mm-hmm.
body better to all the issues that we see in society.
Mm-hmm.
They will shift and change. Even political figures will shift and change. I always tell people the political figures, and I said this in my first book, are there not because of votes and all that, even though that's how our process works. It's because
Mm-hmm.
the energy of the people. And if we shift our energy and consciousness levels, then the leaders are going to change and everything else, so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hope so. But anyhow, and going back to not being a conspiracy theorist or anything, but having to go down that rabbit hole of what you were talking about even earlier about TikTok and how our attention span is being so shortened and all these other devices and social media, blah 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 blah. I was thinking to myself, it seems to me like it's almost by design. It's almost intentional. It's almost like it's in a little social experiment. What would happen if we can, it's just interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah, I kind of had a huge awakening when I was in chiropractic school and just learning about health and the systems of health and how the body heals, and then the systems of our healthcare, and just didn't make sense. I don't get again, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get into conspiracies because I don't know the why behind anything. But like you were saying, it's like one of those things you're like, just doesn't make sense. Like, hold on here, is this like a intentional? Because like, look at all the systems in place. It has to be intentional. What else would it
Right.
be? The why, have no clue. I have some ideas now, but at the same token, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I just don't. It's just it makes you start to question things, but that's kind of the awakening process. Because the awakening is kind of like it's that movie where the guy here has the sunglasses on. I forget the name of it, and he can see what the actual ads mean, like their truth. And then when he takes them off, he just sees whatever, and then he puts it back on. He
Mm-hmm.
can actually see the intention behind it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's awakening because you can never look back. Like anytime anything comes with all the arenas now that I've studied, I'm just like, oh, that's there because here it's just is going to be yada yada yada, and that's why, and it
Mm-hmm.
ties to this. And somebody's like, how do you know that all in your head? I'm like, I don't. It's just you've been
Mm-hmm.
around it so long, you can't not see it. You know the game, and it's just I don't know how the outcomes are going to be, but you just know the game and the process
Mm-hmm.
because of the systems that have been developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of scary at first, but when you really dig into it and you get that kind of awareness, you do realize how much we are being manipulated, and then we do have control over it. So it's just that awareness.
It is. It's a game changer once we can realize this is why I
Mm-hmm.
do what I do for my books and stuff, is just to try and empower people to live more and fulfilled life, but live in a way, especially my last book, to get out of that mental prison and
Mm-hmm.
really live your life intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, when we step out of the matrix and we start to live intentional, we're choosing what our path is going to be. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to criticize. The masses will criticize because that's what we do as a society. Anytime
Mm-hmm.
that someone steps out of what our norms are and our
Mm-hmm.
what this is what everyone does. This is how we do things. And then you go and
Mm-hmm.
step out of it, you're going to be castrated, or you're going to be humiliated, or you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We do that on every single level.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same token, that's usually a sign to know you're living your truth. Because if it truly matters, I always say ignore what others say and just do what you feel happy with
Mm-hmm.
and what you love, because at the end of the day, that's what matters the most.
Have you ever heard the story about the crabs in the
Yeah, the
bucket?
whole crab in the barrel kind of a thing.
Right.
That's how the
Yeah.
matrix works.
Yeah. But everybody, and if a crab is trying to get out, the other ones will pull them back in
Do you
because
know
they
why
don't
that
want
is?
them. Why?
I don't know. I'm
Oh,
still trying to figure. I think it's a cool phenomenon. I've asked so many people and I've tried researching it, and it's just like I don't know. It's just a phenomenon that they do.
well, I think about it, as like, for example, when I was leaving home, I was the third child out of five girls, but I was the first one to leave home by, moving halfway across the country. And I had so much blowback, so many people saying, you cannot go, you can't do this. And all of the reasons why, that I couldn't do it. It was too far away. I would, what if I got sick? What if I got hurt? What if this? What if that? And it's like, well, I can take care of myself. I'm an adult, but it was really funny that you're going against the tribe or you're going against the flow, and nobody wants you. And it could be even good intentions. They don't want you to get hurt. But it could be, no, you have to stay here with us in this bucket and don't go out and accomplish something that maybe I want to accomplish, but I don't have the courage to do.
Yeah.
That's my
Well,
take.
yeah. Well, even from like just from a vibration standpoint, like the law of association, kind of going back to that a little bit. If you take one tuning fork here, and
Mm-hmm.
I have another one here. Now it can
Mm-hmm.
be the short. What is this like? Well, not even 6 inches, maybe in my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
It can be on polar opposites of a room.
Mm-hmm.
You strike one, there's only a matter of time. The other one's going to vibrate at the same frequency and hold that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always that frequency, like the matrix is always there. And you have submatrix, our family units are one of those. And it's always going to pull us to that. Once you step out, it's like, what are you doing? You can't be doing that. And again,
Right.
it's I've been through that same experience where I moved away to Arizona. And
Mm-hmm.
family, oh, I don't know what you're doing. Oh, Vic's a mama boy, and all these. I got all this stuff, and then I came back a year and a half later. See, look at all the money you spent, blah blah blah, this and that. And I was just like, man, I go, you know what though? That's another story. But it was one of those things. Again, it's just when someone's doing it, it's a weird phenomenon. I'm still trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out why crabs do that, but it happens in our life. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
about being attentionless, every day you got to do
Mm-hmm.
that because the matrix is pulling you back
Mm-hmm.
every
So
day.
I can understand why people do it to other people, but you're right about the crabs. What is it in their, neural pathways? What is in their brain and their minds that are going, hey, we need to pull this guy back in?
Man, I don't know. That's the thing about crabs. I don't understand why they do
Yeah.
it. Again, I've researched it, tried to understand it. It's just one of the phenomenons that you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what they do and this is how they do it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's just something about the numbers of three crabs, two crabs. Maybe the third's a buffer. I have no idea.
Okay, so for the listeners, if anybody knows about the crabs and you have the answer for us, please do contact us because we would love to hear this and share it with the world. So one less thing to worry about. Okay. Well, Vic, this has been awesome talking to you. Tell the audience where they can find you, how they can get a hold of you, where they can find your books, and also how to find your podcast.
I appreciate that. So my website's my hub, empoweryourreality.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can find everything there from if you're a business owner and you're interested in coaching, you resonate what I talked about. I have a free call up on there. I have some free resources on my website. I have a book on the power visualization there. You can also, if on social media wise, if you want to connect with me there on the bottom left of my website, I have it there, which is I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And I share about, 4 to 5 times a week. I'll share a video here and there about something. And then my book is main area is Amazon. I have it in Kindle or ebook format. I have it in audio and I have it in paperback, but it's available on like 45 different online retailers.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Amazon is usually the go-to.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Well, Vic, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. But before we sign off, do you have like one final pearl of wisdom, one thing that the audience can really mull over and think about?
Yeah, I would say out of everything we talked about today and Matrix and all these other things is go back, and this is going to sound weird, but go back to being that 3, 4-year-old kid that you were and tap into that imagination again of what you want to create for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a secret or not even a secret. I try to teach this to my clients. This is basically what I do with clients almost all the time is trying to get them back to that state because when you go there, it's like you now you're in coordinates and in harmony with the universe and how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can create that life that you desire that way. And just
Mm-hmm.
to give a little social proof, this is what billionaires do. And when I studied billionaires, almost all of them, I say over 80+% of them, all use, like, for 20 minutes, they let their mind just go and they imagine whatever they want to imagine and they just let it be. And so I was like, well, if they're doing it and look at their lives, there's got to be something to this.
Excellent advice. I love that. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the conversation and where it went.
So do I. So did I. It was really a lot of fun and I learned a lot. That's why I do this. You know, I really basically think I do it more for myself than anything else because I learned so much from my awesome guests. And you are definitely one of the among the top 10. So thanks again.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. And do check out Dr. Vic's books, his podcast, you know, his coaching services, and connect with him on social media. Obviously, he has a lot to say and a lot of fun to talk to and a lot of fun to listen to. And remember to embrace that inner child. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but, you know, you go back to thinking like that 3-year-old, 4-year-old that you were, and magic really can happen. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.